p.m. This joint special meeting. Okay. This special meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Port of Allen and the Port of Grapeview is called to order. Please rise and recite with me the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this important joint special meeting between the Port of Allen and the Port of Grapeview. I'd like to thank the Port of Allen Commissioners and staff for hosting our joint meeting. Thank you, thank you. It's a pleasure to see representatives from both of the Port Commissions coming together to address a matter that I think is of great importance to our communities and our environment. Our collaboration today reflects our shared commitment to preserving and enhancing the restoration of the salmon population in Case Inlet that is integral to the well-being of our port districts and our citizens. Before we dive into the agenda, I'd like to take a moment to introduce the esteemed commissioners and staff from both port districts who are with us today. From the Port of Allen, Commissioner Judy Scott, Commission Chair, Commissioner Michael Curtin, Commission Secretary, Executive Director Travis Merrill. From the Port of Grapeview, we've got Commissioner Art Whitson from District 1. He's also the Commission Secretary. I'm Commissioner Mike Blaisdell, District 2, Commission President, and we have Commissioner Gene Farmer from District 3. And from Case Inlet Fisheries Task Force, we have Brad Pomeroy with us tonight. Brad, can you maybe introduce any members or partners you have here with you tonight?
Sure, be glad to do that. Do you
Thank
want
you.
to stand up here? Or
yes, please.
Please.
Yes, so, first of all, from the task force, we do have a representative on the task force from each port. So Art is the representative for the Port of Grapeview. Travis has been filling in as a representative from the Port of Allen. In total, we have nine members on the task force. Bob Pastor is one of our members. He's here as well. And then Phil Wolf is here too. So the others couldn't make it, traveling, other commitments, and so forth. But it's a great group of volunteers that are here that are working on the task force. Also, we have Lexi Hadfield from the CT Director for the North Mason Schools, and then Dana Rosenbach, who is the Superintendent of North Mason Schools. And the reason they're here is a lot of what we're going to focus on for the net pens, and part of our discussion tonight will be around the education program that they're launching actually in less than a week, which is all around workforce development. So developing the skills in our kids to work in the industries that are important to us around fisheries or natural resources in general. And so when the time comes, Lexi will give you kind of an update of what the school is doing. It's pretty exciting stuff. So,
Okay. Very good.
Okay. Good?
Yes, thank you. We're fortunate to have such a dedicated group of individuals who are committed to the success of the Case Inlet Fisheries Task Force and to the betterment of our community. So thank you, Brad. Today we're here to discuss the work and goals of the Case Inlet Fisheries Task Force, which began as a collaborative effort of our two ports in response to years of complaints received from residents regarding the lack of salmon in Case Inlet. Task Force was formed by the ports to study the situation and report back to each Board of Commissioners. By working together, it's our hope that we can leverage our collective expertise, resources, and passion for the restoration of the salmon population to make a lasting impact. We'll be hearing from Brad Pomeroy of the Case Inlet Fisheries Task Force as he outlines the objectives, challenges, and opportunities that lie ahead. I look forward to our discussions this evening and to positive outcomes that will arise from our joint efforts. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for your dedication to this vital issue. Agenda item 3 is our public comment session. Both commissions want to hear your ideas or concerns. Each person may address the commission one time during the public comment period, and all comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. If you're attending via Zoom, you'll have the opportunity to virtually raise your hand to provide public comment. When recognized, please state your name and address for the meeting record. Are there any comments at this time? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on. Oh, excuse me. Is there? Sorry.
Just if I may interrupt.
Sorry, yep, I forgot about that.
One public comment that was requested via email to be read into the record. This is from Mr. Ken Van Buskirk. Commissioners and Task Force representatives. Having worked for the United States Forest Service for 30 years, I fully support the task force partnerships with the North Mason School District to support the school's natural resources development programs. However, after looking at the agenda and the two proposed resolutions, I offer the following observations. After closely following the POA, Port of Allyn, meetings for the last 8 years, I think the Port's current and foreseeable financial instability coupled with their liability issues, they cannot afford to support either of the resolutions, nor can they add this project to their comprehensive scheme of improvements. They do not have the administrative support to administer either resolution. In my opinion, they already have several serious ongoing liability issues and cannot take on any more. In closing, I would suggest that the task force reach out to the Greater Peninsula Conservatory as a possible partner. Thank you, Ken Van Buskirk.
Thank you, Travis. Let's see, so last call for any public comment. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item number 4, and it's a task force update. So at this time, I'll ask Brad Homboy to come up and provide us with a brief update on the current work of the task force. Brad?
Thank you. And you know, please let me know if you just want me to, like, okay, that's enough. We know that, we've heard it, because many of you have heard updates already. So I'm not going to drag you through all of that again. I failed to introduce Kelly Granger. Kelly's the owner, he and his wife are the owners of the Fair Harbor Marina, which is where we intend to put our first net pen. So Kelly's been working with us to spec that out, working on the lease, the aquaculture lease permit that we'll need to implement that net pen there. And then on the phone or on Zoom, we have Summer. Hi, Summer, wherever you are. She is the primary instructor that's going to be working many of the school's programs as well. So, so with that, you know, what is this meeting about? It's about community and youth. And when we learned at what was going on at Point Defiance, and I've mentioned this before, it's incredible to see community and the engagement of community members in the schools, in the tribes, in Department of Fish and Wildlife rallying around this common cause, which is to introduce fish and support the education program. It really is, the vibe is just contagious. The turnout they get for events and releasing fish is amazing. In fact, they have a waiting list of community members that want to volunteer to help support the program. So, you know, it really is about bringing community together and then providing our students with opportunities. You know, I think helping our students understand the magnificence of really of where we live and in our environment, and then preparing them to work in critical jobs for our area is a good cause. And, you know, given the challenges of kids growing up today, they need all the support they can get. And so we're very excited. I mean, in coming off of the work that Sammy and Point Defiance are doing, really excited to see the work that Lexi and Dana and the school is putting into this. So, you know, again, I'll just remind you that the task force, we're all volunteers. We have 9 of us. We've been working now for 3 years. And our initial goal was to increase the salmon population in Case Inlet. And then we realized that there's other opportunities that really dovetail very nicely into that. And part of that came based on what we learned at Point Defiance, how important it was for the community. So it's not just about fish, it's about the community, and as I mentioned, the schools as well. To date, we've got our permit for the aquaculture lease extension ready to submit. We've got specs for the net pens. We've got costs for the net pens. We're working with the Squaxin Island tribe, as we have for 3 years, and the Department of Fish and Wildlife to make sure that we have smolts ready to go in that net pen, which we would like to put in probably late winter, early spring this year. And then we've been working a lot to support the education work that's going on at the school. So that's kind of where the task force is today and what we've been focused on. And I've got some other notes here, Mike, that probably tie into other items on the
Sure.
agenda. So
Sure, I think that's a good.
maybe item 5 is, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's a good brief update at this point, and I'll have you remain up here because we'll have you speak on the next couple of items as well. Are there, before we move to the next agenda item, are there any comments or questions for Brad? Okay, so let's move on to agenda item number 5, and this was the alignment of the port's objectives, and I'm assuming with what the task force is doing. And so again, I'll have Brad speak on how he believes the work of the task force aligns with the port's objectives.
Right, and again, if you may help clarify what the port's objectives are today, and I know a lot of that is driven by the current comp scheme. And so this may be a port objective that I'm speaking to, or you may say, well, it should be, but it's not today. So I don't know the objectives that clearly. But one I know is workforce development, right, and economic development and environmental stewardship of our areas. So regarding the workforce development, go ahead. Did you have, so I'd like Lexi just to come up. I know she prepared kind of a one-pager just to give you a very brief overview of what this school program is all about and what it means to our youth. So, Lexi.
I would first like to start off and thank you for the opportunity to be here and share some of the great things that we're doing in our North Mason schools that happen to align with the task force. One of the main goals of Career and Tech Ed is to create meaningful pathways for our students that are allowed to support their interests and the needs of our communities, and really focus on some of the in-demand jobs that are here in our community. For our natural resources, we are building actually 2 pathways out of that, a marine science pathway and then a land side pathway. And our marine science is going to have the large focus on the salmon net pens. And we have a 3-year plan to roll out each side of that, and both of them will end in a capstone project. So if you see our sequence of our fisheries pathway, this year we added Introduction to Agriculture, Farming, and Natural Resources class, and that goes for both pathways. That sets the foundation no matter which pathway a student wants to pursue. And taking the Intro to AF&R class, they're also getting a 1.0 lab science credit. So they're getting academics and career development out of that class. And in addition, we're also adding a robotics class to this pathway. The year 26-27, we will add the next level of a fisheries class, so either another level of marine science or a fisheries management class. We will work with the Washington State Department of Fisheries and Wildlife and find out which one fits our need most and which is going to be most beneficial for our students. We will also be adding underwater robotics. We know we're going to need to maintain those net pens. They're going to need to be cleaned, and we're going to need to be able to see that. So we are going to combine environmental science with engineering and robotics and hopefully some coding. So students are going to build those robots to go down and clean and maintain those net pens. The teachers at SAMI were very generous and shared their curriculum that they're using with their students. And Summer has been really hard at work all summer doing some training and learning and building our sequence of programs. And then for fisheries, our students will end with that capstone program. They will be managing, maintaining those net pens. Hopefully they'll be educating some of our younger students out of the elementaries when they're kind of doing their salmon life cycle unit and working with our community members, building those partnerships, gaining those industry skills, and either going right to work or pursuing further education in an area of natural resources and fisheries management. And then on our timber side, same thing. They're going to start with Intro to AF&R. We had a field biology class already. We've just moved it over to CTE with a little bit more career focus. Next year, we'll add an advanced placement or AP environmental science or a different class. We're going to lead on our experts on which they recommend. And then 26-27 will be a capstone class for that pathway also. So we've got a lot of really cool and awesome things going on in North Mason in terms of natural resources and getting our kids ready to come work at home. Yes.
Where will the net pens be?
Where did you say?
So the net pens will be,
Over here.
I say we start with net 10.
Yeah, over here.
It'll be at Fair Harbor.
Okay, and then we'll go from there.
Well, they will, ideally, they'll all be in, next to each other
Oh,
at
okay.
Fair Harbor. So
Okay.
when we kind of spec'd it out, and Art, you've been involved in this, and we've a lot of conversations with Kelly, we probably have room for up to 5 net pens. Think about 80,000 smolts per net pen. But we want to start with 1, right? We want to prove this out, make sure that it works, make sure that the fish are healthy and everything goes as planned. Get some experience with this, and then we look at expanding that. So again, when we applied for the lease amendment for the aquaculture permit, we included a footprint large enough to kind of cover the end game, if you will.
Thank you.
And that area will be the classroom of our students.
Any other questions for Lexi or Brad on this?
How much does a net pen cost?
That pen costs,
35,000?
I think, 20, it's, hold on, it should be, new, the net pen costs $24,000, plus about $3,000, that's the flotation and all of that, plus about $3,000 for the nets. And I say nets because you use 2 nets, one to keep the fish in, one to keep the predators out. And that's the model they use at the Squaxin Island Tribe, at Point Defiance. And I'll talk about this a little bit more, but there's also an option to look at getting used net pens, either donated or at a significantly reduced cost. And we need to understand what shape those pens are in. Because the last thing we want to do, at least for our first pen, is put a pen in the water and have it sink or break apart, right? And unintentionally release these fish that we're trying to safeguard and rear till they're big enough to go. So we have options there. We were hoping to go with new for the first net pen because we know it's going to be stable and it's going to work. And we'll get some experience under our belt.
I have another question. How many more permits do we have to get?
How many more permits?
Yeah. Do we have a county permit? Do we have,
What we've been told, so we have Mark LaRiviere as a fish biologist, retired fish biologist. He's on our group as well. He's done a lot of digging. He's worked with Phil, who's retired from the DNR. It looks like the only permit we need is the lease amendment from the DNR. So today, Kelly already has an aquaculture lease and somebody raising oyster.
So we have national, we have national shellfish on our docks, have had since Vernon Susan used to own the facility. And so they've been there for years, basically with a fluffy in the side area of our docks, raising oyster buds. Okay, oyster seeds. You would know the correct term. You were in that
yes,
industry.
larvae?
Okay, and so when Brad approached me and we started talking about this, it seemed to be a natural fit because the fact is the agriculture leases are already there, the aquaculture
Okay,
lease.
cool.
Okay, so we felt it would be easy enough and be objective enough to be able to take it and extend and just basically parlay off of that and get where we needed to be for the additional square footage.
And I do want to mention that these are temporary net pens, right? These are not fish farms, these are not permitted. And Kelly, in the summertime, he needs his dock space. And we want to get those pens out of the water. So beginning of every summer, end of the spring, the fish will be released, those net pens will be pulled out, stored, cleaned and stored, and then put back in the following year. So they go in and out every year.
Has a grant already been acquired for this, or how are you paying for them? A grant, is there a grant for this?
No. Part of what we're asking the ports to do is to help fund the initial net pen. The initial net pen. And the the nets. We are applying for grants. There are two that, one is available in 2026 and the other in 2027. The one in 2026 is called No Child Left Inside. And it seems like a dead fit for the work that we're doing. And Judy, I've got it written down. I don't recall the name of the second grant, but Bob's been looking into both of those. Bob has done a lot of grant work. It was pivotal in getting the funding for the boat launch for the Port of Grapeview. So we are definitely looking at the grants. You know, Lexi and Nana, you've been looking into school grants as well. And I guess I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but the other potential here is public funding, public donations. We've been approached by people who would like to donate to help cover the cost of these pens. As I mentioned, the communities, they're excited about this, so.
Yeah, and we'll circle back later in the agenda on some of what you're asking for there. Any other questions on agenda item 5 at this point from anybody? I guess the only thing I would add is I think the objectives of most port districts do revolve around economic development, enhancing infrastructure and creating jobs, workforce development, and ensuring sustainable use of natural resources. So I think the work of the task force does align with the port's objectives. Let's move on to agenda item 6, and this was benefits for the ports. And again, I'll call on Brad to speak about how he believes the work of the task force brings benefit to the ports.
Sure. Thanks again, Mike. So, you know, there may be other benefits as well that the commissioners would know better than I do. I already mentioned building community, and you know, I wish I could show you what it was like to be there at Point Defiance, and I don't know how many people there were. 100 people flocked all around looking at these fish going into the pens, and then again when they release the fish. So, you know, I think just building community, this is a great way to do this, right? Around fish and around education. It's public acknowledgement of the port's support in making this happen. When we look at Point Defiance, they've got signage right out front. Hey, this was done in a partnership with, in their case, it was the Puyallup Tribe, Department of Fish and Wildlife, several sportsman group. I don't know if they had a port involved, but there would be public acknowledgement that the ports played a key part in making this happen. You know, increased revenue. As we have more fish here, we have more fishermen, fisher people coming to fish, right? And that's boat launch fees. And, you know, the extension of that is economic development for our broader community as well. And then, you know, finally, Mike, you mentioned the ecosystem, right? So you're helping to, I guess, kind of repair and restore the North Bay, Case Inlet to the populations that we've had in the past. So bringing those fish populations back up and to help restore that ecosystem that has been suffering, you know, well, for a long time, but the fish have declined from 2003 to where we are today.
Brad, you might mention too that fish used to be released from Coulter and they no longer are.
Yeah, so we're not losing sight of Coulter Creek hatchery. And the reason that the fish began declining in 2003 is they stopped releasing fish from that hatchery. And I've mentioned this before to the commissioner, so I don't want to drag you down through this, but everything in this space is complicated. The fish that they raise there every winter, right? We see those pens operating. There's over 3 million smolts being raised there every year. Those smolts are committed to the Squaxin Island tribe to be released down in the Deschutes River down in Tacoma. There's a hatchery that will be built down on the Deschutes that'll include rearing facilities. When that facility is up and running, then it begs the question, what do you do with this facility here? And we've been working with the Department of Fish and Wildlife to say, hey, when you have capacity here, we want to see those fish being released back here. And and they're open to that. I mean, we saw last winter, they're investing in that facility. I don't know if you saw the construction going on there, but they are investing. So, you know, I think they see a long-term play for that facility as well. So thanks, Phil.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brad. Are there any questions or comments regarding agenda item 6 for?
I'd like to make one. Just over the course of the time that I've been here, I've seen the increase of fishing being done here in this area. In the last 2 years alone, the runs have been better. The fish are coming in, they're bigger, there's more. So you're getting more and more outside interest coming into this area to fish this area. So I think as this goes on, and if we can actually, you know, this thing grows legs and we get it to where we want it to be, it's just going to do nothing but increase, like Brad mentioned, revenue for you guys at the boat ramp, revenue for us, people coming in for fuel and everything else. I think it benefits everybody in the area, especially if you start looking at, you know, local restaurants and that kind of stuff. You're getting people to come out here and stay. I've had a ton of people that inquire all the time if they can dump trailers overnight in my lot, and or if I've just got a spot to put a boat for the evening because they want to be out here and fish. And so VRBOs, people who have houses, that type of stuff, the revenue stream has started to really start to uptick a little bit in that area because of this, because the fish is getting better, the runs out here are getting better. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kelly. Okay.
Commissioner Chair, if I may go.
Yes, go ahead.
I can tell you this, there was a dock full of people for almost 2 weeks out here watching orcas. And those orcas aren't here if there's no salmon. So they don't come down this far to the bay that often, but they did, and they have been the last few years. So proof in the pudding that the fish are coming back. But if we saw a real run coming out of here, it could be pretty special. Thank you.
Thanks, Travis. Yeah, I think there are a number of benefits, and you mentioned one about, I think, public acknowledgement, and I think the lack of public acknowledgement is a real challenge for most special districts, including, you know, ports. You know, most people are unaware of what we do or how we impact their lives, daily lives anyway. And I think that lack of visibility can make it difficult to gain public recognition and support for our efforts. And I think the work of the task force does bring, I think, a tremendous opportunity for both ports that, you know, that need that public awareness. Okay. Let's move on to agenda item 7. This one's a review of the current joint resolution. A copy of that current joint resolution was included in your meeting documents. To summarize, in August of 2021, the Port of Grapeview and the Port of Allen established the Case Inlet Fisheries Task Force. As stated in the resolution, both ports have for years received complaints of the lack of salmon in Case Inlet, in which the condition has become exceedingly worse. The stated purpose of the task force is to study the situation and report back to each Board of Commissioners. Each port assigned one commissioner for the oversight of the task force, and the task force facilitator to be designated by joint port motion. So that is the current resolution. I would say we're probably still working under. I don't know if anybody has any questions on that. I know a few of you here were part of that, approving that resolution. So, okay, without any other questions or comments, we'll then move to agenda item 8. And this is, we've talked a little bit about this already, and this was kind of what the task force is asking for, I think, in terms of financial support. I know you've already hit on some key points there, Brad, but I'll let you kind of maybe finish on some of your thoughts or comments on that.
Yeah, and again, we touched on a number of these things, so I'll be brief. You know, I just, you know, when we install this first net pen, we're building a classroom, you know, as Lexi talked about. So just think about that in terms of, you know, as you think about an investment, think about the kids and what it would be like for them to, you know, care for these fish, release these fish, and more importantly, 2 or 3 years later, see those fish back here again, right? So, you know, in terms of what we're asking for, I mentioned, Judy, you'd asked the question, how much and what do you, who's going to pay for it? We are hoping that between the two ports, we would get some support, again, for this initial net pen purchase. And I mentioned that there are two scenarios, a new net pen. Either scenario, we'd need new nets, for sure. Whether we go with a used pen or a new pen, you got to buy nets. And you have to have food to feed the fish. And so I've kind of laid out those costs. For the fish and the nets, it's about $7,000. For the net pen, new is about $24,000. And these are Department of Fish and Wildlife approved net pens. So we won't run into any problems with, meeting the specifications of the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And then kind of the last thing is, up until this year, both ports have helped us cover the cost of our website. It's $250 a year. You've been splitting the costs. But I think because the resolution is kind of weak, Mike, it doesn't really lay out what the ports are signing up to do. There were some challenges, and the port, at least the Port of Grapeview, so far said we've got to find another way to be able to fund that website. So as of today, I've paid for it, but we'd like to see that support, I guess, coming back from the ports again. And I did mention we've got interest from community members and task force members to make donations to this cause. We need to find the best way to manage that. We are not a 501c3. We've avoided that because there's a lot of work and overhead that goes into establishing a nonprofit. It's doable, but we're all volunteers. We're spending our time trying to keep this ball moving and don't want to spend time managing a 501c3. But we're looking at other options for how we can collect and distribute the money, use the money to come back and pay for this. So I'd say at worst case, we're asking for $30,000 for year one for the first net pen. That's a new net pen. If we have to go a different route, we'll learn more about those options. One of our members is going out to look at the net pens, the used net pens next week, to get a sense of what these things are like. Do they even float, right? We need to have something that's going to work. So, that's kind of what we're here asking you, the commissioners, for. And I don't really know how you go forward from here, Mike, with that ask on the table. But that's kind of what we're looking for.
No, absolutely, and we'll in agenda item 9, we'll kind of do a little bit deeper dive into some of the challenges that at least I think you probably see from the port side of things. I will say this: there's definitely opportunity for the ports through RCW to support the task force. RCW 5308-245. Port districts can work with organizations to include nonprofits and private entities to support economic development programs such as job training and education. Port districts can partner with local employers and nonprofits to undertake workforce development, including occupational training, occupational education. So there is on the books, kind of a gateway to do that. It's how do we get from point A to point B, I think. And I think we'll probably talk about that a little bit as we go to agenda item number 9, which is kind of proposed next steps. Thank you, Brad, first off, really for the valuable information you've shared and people with your team shared with us tonight. Your commitment to the work that lies ahead for the task force is tremendous. So, I think we'll, as we say, turn our attention to those next steps for the ports so we can kind of ensure we move forward effectively. I'd like to encourage everyone to share your thoughts and feedback. Your input is really crucial in shaping our approach to moving forward. So let's discuss how we can best maybe tackle the task ahead. Any ideas or concerns you may have. I'd like to start by asking the commissioners from the Port of Allyn, if that's okay. Commissioner Scott, would you maybe share your thoughts on what next steps, your perspective.
I'd like to know what your financial position for the Port of Grapeview is. Is that something that's doable for you?
The
Do you have a budget even for that?
We would have to, we have, in general terms in our comprehensive scheme, workforce development and training and, education, things like that. We'd probably want to amend that to, specifically for this project. The port does have IDD money as well that they could possibly, in the right way, use to support from our operating. No, we don't have much operating income.
We know how that goes.
But there are, the port does have, some options that they can do, mainly from what you see with our CW 5308 245.
Yeah. This is just my 2 cents, and then Mike, you need to speak up too. In one sense, the Port of Allen has been through a great deal amount of trouble with all the deaths and whatnot, but trying to regain what we've lost and going through some other items. Financially, I don't think we could really submit much. However, I want to say I support this. It's desperately needed. Desperately needed again. I kind of miss seeing some of what they used to do at the elementary school. So I think it's really important to support that. I guess financially, I don't know if that we can do that. I would certainly like what Mr. Van Buskirk said, maybe ask about the Great Peninsula Conservancy. They are a good group. I don't know if their 501c3 allows for that, but might be something worth investigating. And going for grants, I think with this, I don't know, Phil would probably know better than us about grants for the fisheries. I know you were DNR, but
Well, I guess Bob has pointed out, there is no child left inside, and those are for, those are through RCO.
oh, okay, gotcha.
But but you still need a match, and then you need to be able to administer, the grant funds, have a place to put the grant funds and a place to administer them too.
Just
And
one
those
quick
are
question on that.
26.
Bob, I think,
Can I clarify?
yeah, you mentioned the other day that you didn't think for that one grant, no child left inside, that it did require a match.
Explain this to the commissioners.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Sure.
There are 2 grants that apply to this. No Child Left Inside, which opens immediately. Grants are a 2-year process. So we have to have our application in by October 31st. And Mike, you and I worked on the local parks maintenance grant, if you recall. You
Yes.
saw what that was all about. But we got to go through the whole thing again. It requires a couple things. One is a resolution from the boards authorizing to go after the grant. That's got to be in before October 31st. There are 3 internal portions of the grants, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Tier 1 and Tier 2 do not need match. So it's free money. I think because of the beautiful participation we have in this room right now, that we can get that grant. But it's not going to be money that comes to us until 2026.
Right.
The other grant is the outdoor learning grant. That was this year, so the money would be coming to anybody who wins in that arena next 2025. So we'll go after that one also when it reopens next year. 2025 will be an opening for that grant. And it would be my suggestion to you people, you're the hammer here, that we go after that grant also. But right now, we're up against the gun. We've got to do something by October 31st. As you know, Mike, it's a lot of work.
Yep.
I'm willing to do the work. I've got great help here. And we're going to be in Tier 1, I believe, maybe Tier 2. I think Tier 1, as I say in my brief to you, Brad, is 5,000 to 40,000. Yeah, 5,000 to 40,000. Tier 2 is 5,000 to 75,000. Neither one requires a match.
So that would be a good opportunity to
That's
pursue
great.
those then.
Thank you, Judy. Yeah, it would be.
Yes.
But unfortunately, the money doesn't come until 2026.
True, but better late than never.
That's exactly right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay. And then, you know, questions about who administers it, who, you know, because we're sharing, if we do this, you know, sharing who administers it and administrates it, all that too.
Absolutely.
May I address that also? Because I asked my contacts at RCO yesterday if we can do a dual application, both ports. Because right now the application suggests one sponsor, as they call it, okay? I'm wondering if we can get two sponsors. I'll have an answer to that in a couple of days, because they're pretty busy down there with a lot of grants. But what I'm asking is for a joint, like a joint resolution, just to even be here, a joint application for the grant.
Okay. Great. I don't want to add more on Travis's plate. He's got a lot. So that's my concern.
Overworked and underpaid as it is.
Well, and I think you raised some good questions that I think we need to talk about a little bit later on too. Anything else before I move on to
that's
Commissioner
fine,
Curtin?
thank you.
So I just make one
Yes.
comment. So I think, I guess we're pretty confident that this grant will be available to us in 2026. Based on the work Bob's done, it fits directly into what we're trying to do. So assuming we can get the ports to sponsor applying for that grant, that helps us in 2026. Where we're in a bind is getting a net pen in place for 2025. And so we're kind of looking for a bridge here to help us fund that and make that happen.
Okay. Commissioner Curtin?
I think it's an awesome idea, 100% behind it. I know right now, Port Allen financially is unable to do it. It's not there. Wish it was, but it's not. But I think we should definitely look at possibly doing, you know, get the grants and see what we can go from there, but
Okay.
Do we need a I'm sorry, Mike,
Oh, go ahead.
okay. Are you done?
yeah, go ahead.
I think you need some type of a resolution, number one, to actually even go after the grants, but I think the resolution that is in place is prohibitive of a lot of support, because it doesn't mention any support that was going to be given to the task force. And I'll talk a little bit about that in my comments. Anything else, Commissioner?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Farmer?
I've worked with the Great Peninsula Conservancy. I was on their board. They do a lot of local work around here. They have funds. They've done work over on the North Shore. I was on their board, so I planted trees and things like that. And they do work with salmon, I know that. That's a conversation that we should have with them. I would hope that they would want to be involved with this, because this is right in the area they work.
Okay. Any other comments or observations?
That's it.
Commissioner Whitson?
Yeah, this is kind of my thing. I like to fish, and I'm a former environmental engineer at Boeing. I started basically the environmental management program there, and one of the things we did is in the city of Tukwila, we supported I think it was a grade school program where they were releasing fish, and we had a site that was on the Duwamish. We did a lot of prep work. We got the stream working really well in terms of being environmentally compliant. And man, after the first year, we had, well, let me see, 2 years after that, we had nice salmon getting up into the stream. And it was amazing. They got through the gauntlet of nets, and they had to go through a pipe that was in the dike, so to speak. And I was impressed. You could have kicked the fish out of the stream. There were so many of them. And that was just one kid showing up with 2 or 3 fish. So there were probably about 400 or 500 kids that showed up. And we did it for a number of years. I don't know what happened to that program after I left, but it was really effective. So I can really see how this would be a real benefit, not only to the environment, but also an educational program. One of the questions I have for the school district, I know they want to get this thing launched next year, but you know, we're trying to get nets in place in 2025. But what happens if we can't is with regards to your program?
We adapt and we adjust. The program is launching regardless. And Summer is working on building year 2 of our pathways, so she might be able to answer a little bit more than I can, but either way, we are going this direction. And it's really important for us as we're building pathways for our students. Again, we're building pathways that they're interested in, that their skill sets and aptitudes align in, so we're placing them somewhere where they can be successful. And we really want to provide opportunities for kids to build up their homes and build up their workforce in the place where they live, because that's their home. And a lot of our kids like to stay here in Mason County.
Very cool.
Anything
Yeah, that's all I have.
I too am very, very impressed with the work you guys have done, and you know, we want to be as supportive as we can to what the task force is you know, working on and their vision into the future. The challenge that I have is what kind of box do I put the task force in? You know, the task force was started with that resolution. It was very vague. Basically, it was the stated purpose was to study the situation and report back to the Board of Commissioners. That was it. You know, when I think of a task force, I think of something as a temporary group, you know, kind of put together to you know, address maybe a specific issue or a problem. Normally in a defined time frame. You know, there was no defined time frame in that resolution. It failed to address any funding, staffing, or administrative resources to be used by the task force. It didn't give the task force any decision-making authority. And I know the task force has kind of taken the ball and ran, because you've definitely gone past.
They've gone past their goals and objectives.
Yeah, of that resolution.
They reported back to us, say, "Yay, barely, this is what we got to do."
Yeah, and which I think is great, but it does create some problems when we look at how do we best support the task force. If the task force is going to continue, this is my feelings anyway, and I've talked to others too that know this a little bit. If the task force is going to be kind of an advisory group of the port, everything the task force does needs to basically be done by the port. The ports need to be make the decisions. The ports need to be administering. If for example, if you're going for, let's say, permits, it should be the port going for the permits, because you are just an advisory group of the port. That's the way I look at it. You've got there's definitely Title 53, and Bob knows this well too. Really states all the rules ports have to follow as far as if you're going to have work done, and how you've got to get bidding, public works, paying bills, things like that. It pretty much has to all be done by the ports if you're an advisory group. The port can't skirt around following Title 53 by saying we're going to start an advisory group here, so we don't have to do all that.
So Mike,
yes.
Earlier, you mentioned that, I think it was part of RCW 53.
Yes.
That the port can support private groups.
Private or nonprofit.
Or nonprofit
yes.
groups as well.
Yes.
So what if we said, okay, as an advisory committee, our work is done. We are now a private group that is pursuing,
I think,
salmon
yeah, I
enhancement.
think you're on the right path there, and I think if you actually become, a legal entity, probably with the state even, because a port, again, can't just give money to a group of citizens. I mean, you have to be, I feel, a legal entity to do that. Again, I'm not sure what's involved with that, but yeah, that would make it a heck of a lot easier, I think, for the ports to support you.
If I may. Yeah. It would also take away the need for the ports to create separate funds.
Correct.
And I've talked with the Mason County Treasurer, and it would be highly unorthodox to set up a port fund for another entity.
Right.
That with all that money's going into that fund for that entity. Once the port collects the money, it's really the port's money to do with it.
That's what my research said as well, and then the
absolutely.
money could only be spent on a municipal purpose.
Right, right.
Actually, the grant manual, manual 23, which covers the adjustment facade, is very specific about public works and port monies and monies or grants and how it's to be spent. So it's pretty comprehensive. It's not going to bore you
Yeah.
35 or 40 pages of the thing, but it's pretty specific. But yes, you're absolutely correct. You guys are the panel, you guys are you just got to decide between this group and your group, how you want to handle it.
Yeah, and I think if you did that, Brad, I think there'd still be opportunities to pursue grants for you.
Have the port pursue grants,
Correct.
right, and have the funding. So I'll have to maybe talk with you more offline in
Yeah.
terms of, what does becoming a legal entity
Yeah,
mean?
we can do that.
One avenue is a nonprofit.
And my wife Leslie here is well versed in government, and she's probably got some ideas, and
Yes.
she always has a lot of ideas for me anyway.
You're going to also have to amend your comprehensive scheme.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because what we have right now, we've
Absolutely.
comp scheme that is approved by the RCO, but it's going to have to be addressed with
Specific.
specificity
Absolutely.
grants. So
Absolutely.
we have to change that too. So that's a whole other thing to do as well now.
So Bob, have you ever worked alongside like a 501c in this type of situation? Have you?
No.
No, you haven't, okay. I was curious, with all your knowledge on grants and everything else,
Well,
as far as,
the grants were for the Port of Grapeview.
Right,
I was
right.
responsible to the commissioners. They assigned me the
I
task.
thought maybe in another life you had done some stuff or.
No, I got done a lot of other things in my
Yeah.
life. Some things I wish I hadn't done.
Yes, Travis, go ahead.
The Port of Allen actually has a partnership with a non-for-profit, the Hood Canal Salmon Enhancement Group, with a project called the Sweetwater Creek Project that is set up similar to what we're proposing with Brad. Because as long as they're a legal entity, they can set up all their own accounts, they can take all the donations, and then all those donations are easily tracked with them for these projects. And we can literally set up links on our websites that push people that want to donate to that entity to their website so that they can collect the monies.
Would you have a contact individual over there that you'd be able to answer some questions for Brian?
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
Go ahead.
like you said, though, if the ports do it, we're responsible. So it would be pretty much in our,
Well, as you had mentioned, Commissioner Scott, especially on that someone would have to do the administrative work, and you've got Travis.
yeah, but he's already,
We got me.
well, that's where
But I
I
don't have
think,
time for it either.
yeah, I think that would be excellent, but, I see the hard parts of doing the 501c3. Like you said, there's a lot of paperwork.
I
Another
understand
task.
that.
I think-
You have to-
I think setting up the 501c3, there's work to be done there. I think once you actually get it set up, yeah, it's not as cumbersome, but it's getting it set up, and there's definitely a process to doing it.
But IRS Code 170, I'm very familiar with because I donated 15 acres to the port, allows both cash as well as in-kind contributions to government organizations. You're a government organization, it's tax deductible. As a matter of fact, if it's a cash donation, it's worth 60% of your AGI as a deduction. I'm not going to get into specificity of that, okay? The fact is, you are a government organization, and according to the IRS code 170, I can give you the whole thing, they are tax, it's a tax deductible
Yes.
thing for anybody.
No, very,
So you don't have to do a 501c3, you are essentially a 501c3.
well, I was meaning more for the task
Yeah.
force, you know, not the ports, obviously. It'd be the task force. So the task force would basically, like I think Brad had mentioned, your work is done, we dismiss the task force from that resolution, and then you guys would go, you know, and become whatever entity you decide. There's a number of them you can, you know, out there. You'd see what best fits for you guys. And then the ports, as Bob had mentioned, we've got a lot of avenues where we can support, you know, another entity. And the one I really like is the RCW I mentioned earlier. I mean, that is just right in our wheelhouse for what you're doing here with workforce development, economic development. I mean, yeah, to me, yeah, for our port anyway, that's the one, because we can use IDD money for that.
A question about Great Peninsula Conservancy, would they, they're already a 501c3, are they not?
Yeah, and that's just a conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
It's that simple, and so I'm not on the board anymore. I think I did 2 or 3 terms, something like that. But I know Ken is, and just a phone call to Ken I mean, if that's what you want.
They-
Ken Van Busterkirk,
Oh, he's on, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So, just a phone call to him to connect to the right people, and I mean, I don't mind calling too.
And you know what, we're here to do what we can to you know, help you, make you successful. We want to see this happen. I mean, this is important. It's important to us, it's important to the community, it's important to the schools. I mean, we're willing to whatever we can do to help you guys make this happen.
We'll look at our options, and Wayne Harmon's group, is it Northwest Salmon Research? It's a nonprofit that played a key role in point defiance. He's offered to support us as well, so
Sure.
maybe we become part of their organization. Maybe he has the overhead to
And that might
manage
be
So-
something to
so we
pursue
look
as
at it,
well.
We fold into somebody else, right?
Yeah.
And just one comment, I don't know a lot about the Greater Peninsula Conservancy, but one thing we have experienced is in the fish landscape in Puget Sound, there's a lot of people that have very strong views about how things should be done. And some people just flat out oppose hatcheries and oppose net pens. They want wild fish only. They prefer not to have any fishermen, and they want to focus on habitat improvement. So before we reach out to a group, I want to make sure I understand a little bit more about what their objectives are, because we don't want to have them all of a sudden becoming a barrier to us and actively working against what we're trying to do here. So I don't know much about them, Jean.
Go on their website
Yeah,
when
that's
you
what
get
I'll do.
home,
We'll take a
yeah.
look at
I
it.
think that's a valid point.
We're
though.
very careful with
That's a valid
who
point,
we
yeah.
reach out to,
Yeah, I guess, I
because
understand.
it can do more harm than good.
I think you can probably, if you just go on their website and look, you might be able to answer some of those questions.
I will.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions? Travis, did you have anything else on your list?
No, it's just that the way things are set up now, it is very difficult for the ports to navigate through the codes and the laws and, you know, find ways to support a non-entity.
Correct.
And if they chose to become an entity, either public or nonprofit, or you know, private or nonprofit, it opens a lot of doors for us. And you could present all of the work ready to go for a grant, and we could do the actual administrative process of filing it, because we could obtain those grants. Okay, and then there's some grants that you can obtain too, but there's a lot that only ports can obtain.
Right.
And
Right.
we're happy to, or at least, I mean, under my opinion and under the, you know, commission, willing to, I can see that it's not taking up the kind of administrative time that's soaking down the position I have, being the sole full-time administrator of the Port of Allen. So I'm happy to explore those options with you, seeing that you're actually becoming one of those official entities. And my suggestion to the board would be that we could definitely support that. But as a committee, I tried for a good part of a day to really wrap my head around being able to write a resolution that would work. And there was just too many points that weren't jiving with the way ports operate. So.
Well, and you mentioned, because we communicated too, that you guys needed to have the agility to make decisions quickly and to move quickly, and we all know government's not agile. It does not move quickly, and that would definitely, be a barrier for what you guys are trying to get done on a time.
Sure.
A time
But
frame.
if I may, if they were an official entity, we could write resolutions that helped you become more agile, not perfectly agile,
Yeah.
but more agile to move things along.
Yeah, as Bob had mentioned, amending our comprehensive schemes, and we're getting ready into our budget discussions for next year to seeing if what kind of support we can do, and this would be definitely the time to do it. And so I guess before I go on, does anybody have anything else they want to add to the conversation? Okay, so I guess as far as next steps, it's maybe working with you or you exploring how to, become that, that private entity, and what type might best fit what you're doing, or can you work with another nonprofit that's already established? There might be some opportunities for you, for there, and let us, keep us apprised of what, where you're going with that, and obviously we're here to help wherever we can, as well. Was that fair as far as what we look at as next steps in this?
I think we've got, I think you're all genuinely interested in seeing this move forward.
Absolutely.
And I realize, at least for the Port of Allen right now, your hands are tied financially. I guess two things related, so we've got several follow-up items, but you mentioned your budget. We still don't have a commitment or understand how we're going to fund this net headed for 2025. Is this something where, assuming we can become an legal entity, is this something that the Port of Grapeview would consider building into their funding for 2025?
It's something we could definitely look at in those discussions.
And then related, we've got a grant deadline coming up for No Child Left Inside. If we worked and Bob worked on putting the details together for that, and we become this entity, is that something that the port would submit, whether it's jointly or one port or the other submit that application for that grant?
I think we can definitely talk about that, and I'd be very curious to hear what Bob gets back on, whether it can be done jointly. I think it's more horsepower when you can do it that.
Yes, because there's really three entities here, the school districts.
Absolutely, yes, don't forget the school district, yeah.
So, I don't want to lose sight of that, okay?
Absolutely.
Because they are in Manual 23, one of the eligible partners on their own, okay?
Absolutely.
They don't have to have the courts go after it, they can go after it themselves.
Sure.
So, but the thing is that the way I look at it is the publicity for the port doing the right thing for the community is very important.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's-
Absolutely, no, I can't agree with you more. Okay.
I would like to add
Yes, go
something.
ahead, Commissioner Farmer.
I just want to thank you, Brad and Kelly and everyone that's on this. I mean, we started this, 3 years ago?
Years ago,
God,
yeah,
that's
for
even
the
longer.
Grapeview meeting.
Yeah,
with,
and it was exciting to find out, what we could do to make the fish population be better. And just thank you for all the hard work done. I appreciate it.
Yeah, the whole group. Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you, Commissioner Farmer. Yeah, I'd like to also thank everyone for their participation and feedback this evening. I know this is a busy time of year for everybody, and we got a pretty good turnout here for this meeting, which I think, again, shows how important it is to not only us, but for our community. So I want to thank everybody for being here, providing their feedback, their vision, input, assessments, and feedback. So definitely appreciate it. And yeah, the work you guys have done has just been invaluable. I feel, I feel that at least the Port of Grapeview probably should have done a better job of seeing, keeping, really keeping track of what you were doing, as you guys kind of moved away from that original resolution. This is probably a conversation we should have had a couple of years ago, to be honest, and I do apologize for that. Again, thanks to everybody. I don't have anything else on the agenda at this point, so I'm going to go to the adjournment. This concludes our agenda. If there are no objections, we'll now adjourn the meeting.
All right, thank you.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.